for the Women's Wing Working Committee, which was inaugurated just 2-3 days ago. So I'll be supporting the Women's Wing, Dr. Hannah Louisa Bisiu. We have some working committees, so I'll be part of communicating the women-focused policy issues, basically.
Okay. So you're doing that. You are Deputy Director, NDC, National Zongo Caucus.
Yes.
I also have seen you doing communication on behalf of the party.
Yes. So those
are
the
member
three.
Of the campaign team.
And all those roles are interlinked, aren't they? They're all interlinked, yes. It's all communication. It's all communication because the Zongo Caucus is a very critical constituency. In fact, the NDC as a party is the only party that has now recognized the Zongo communities and created a directorate under the various directorates. So we have the Zongo Caucus Directorate, which has its own organogram from a national coordinator to a Magajia, which is the women's focus, and then at the regional level, the same organogram exists. So we have regional Zongo coordinators. At the constituency level, we have. So it tapers down to the branch level. And this is as a result of persistent calls to recognize, the community. They've been the Zongo is for the NDC. Yes, the Zongo areas have been the backbone and support for the NDC since its inception. I mean, even beyond the 1992 constitution, you would know that because of the Aliens Compliance Order under the UP tradition, there are very deep sentiments within our Zongo communities against the New Patriotic Party, who draw their antecedents, from the UP tradition. So that singular recognition is resonating very much, in the Zongo communities. And we are very happy that we are now communicating and re-energizing these communities to know that your home is in the NDC and you need to claim back your glory days and, of course, also assert your demands because there are demands. To whom much is given, much is expected. The Zongo communities, the northern areas have given loyalty to the NDC over the years, and it's just right that the party recognizes that value. Especially now, there's competition, and I'm fair to say that I'm not shy to say that the competition with the entrance of Dr. Baumia makes it now more than ever very critical that we re-emphasize what the NDC has done for the Zongo communities and what they will continue to do for the Zongo communities. Yes.
And I'll come back to the matter of it, but even now I hear it. When you did, and I was I heard them say that Shamima Muslim member of the NDC. I started because I was like, I thought Shamima would come back
to the media. I'm gone. I've flown that nest. I've flown that. But this is our profession. Once you love it, you find different ways of still doing it.
Okay.
Yes. So 9 to 5 media work, no. But will I into the nearest future be open to ideas of still amplifying my voice and views through the medium of mass media? It's a possibility. It's a possibility, but not full time anymore. I'm sitting here. We are doing media work. We are conversing and hopefully educating the public. Hopefully getting them to shift.
I would like to listen to you on this side.
I know. Sometimes it feels weird. When I go into studios these days, it feels so weird having to. But the adrenaline, the feel of a studio, the feel of the headset on my head, just brings back a lot of memories. I think last week or so I went to City FM. Just walking into City FM just brought back a flood of memories, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful profession. Yeah. It's a profession that is a very noble one, and to the extent that we continue to do our best, we should be proud of ourselves. Of course, there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of our media and our media development, and the fact that politics is so taking away from our media. But But we're still here, and we are the vanguards of our democracy. So let's wear the badge with pride. So, yes.
Interesting. Because I was also thinking, you're already doing a lot of advocacy.
Exactly.
Why politics? Why didn't you stay? Because you could have done, you're already doing advocacy for women, for children,
for marginalized and vulnerable and disadvantaged communities.
Yes, and that includes the Zongos and everything.
Yes.
So why the transition to politics?
So I was 23 years when I graduated Legon and started working with an NGO that was very focused on working in indigent communities, poor, marginalized communities, and intervening via the tool of voice, amplifying their voice, human rights education, just basically empowering communities to be able to mobilize themselves and recognize duty bearers within their communities and claim their rights and then influence policy. So eventually I became I was first the director of a parliamentary advocacy project funded by USAID. What did we do? When there were laws tabled in Parliament, which had effects and implications for the livelihoods and sustenance and growth of these indigent communities, which traditionally had no pathways to engage. We pick that law, we come to the community, we hold community fora with chiefs, with women, with youth. We take their inputs into those bills. We did it for a health insurance amendment bill. We did it for sanitation issues. So, for example, there were major sanitation problems in Nima Mamobi Newtown, where the containers would come, they will be full, nobody will pick it up. Through the intervention, we mobilized the youth. They monitored the pickup points. They knew who their MPs were. Even basic thing of locating how to find your MP, how to find your DCE, where to find them, what is their role, what to ask from them. When we assume that people know, we make a mistake. Even some of us who feel we have had some education, sometimes we do not know the expanse of our rights and how to claim them. So this is what we're doing. And I was quickly put on the Domestic Violence Coalition. It was a coalition that would now fight for like a decade and more for the passage of the Domestic Violence Act. So as of 2003, we did not have a Domestic Violence Act. I went in as a young girl in a group of all these senior women advocates. Nano Yelitha, Betty Mold Idrisu, Angela Dramina Boaje, Esther Ofeya Boaje, so many of the front runners in terms of advocacy for rights and empowerment and inclusion were in that. We worked very hard, we mobilized, we acted, we protested, we engaged, and then we had a Domestic Violence Act. When you speak to many of these seniors today, there's a bit of disappointment at the progress we have made as a movement in terms of increasing the numbers and amplifying the issues. As we speak, there's a land rights bill in Parliament, which has paused. A proposed spousal rights bill to protect the rights of spouses. Because this is a country 67 years on, where in some communities, women continue to remain landless. They don't have land in their father's home. They don't have land in their husband's home. They are landless to farm on a community land. And the travesty is that they are the bedrock of the agricultural sector. These women, the informal sector is run by women. The agricultural sector is powered by women. Yet, to even get access to communal land, they must go with a guardian, a male guardian in some of these communities. In today's Ghana, I'm not talking about ancient Ghana. You see, so when we sit and we center the conversation around just mere participation, we lose out on the nuances, the specific issues that mitigate against people's full participation in society. They don't give them land in their father's home, and when their husbands die, they are asked to go back because you farm communally with your husband, right? These are major issues. Spousal rights. People are cohabiting, and we know these days a lot of people cohabit and behave like a couple. And yet, after 15 years, a man can break off a relationship no matter what has been collectively, achieved as a result of that 15 years of cohabitation. You don't have rights because you are not in a formal union. Laws must reflect our reality because laws are made for the society. And laws must reflect how the society organizes itself. So when I sit back and I watch the exhaustion with the advocacy movement, also because funding has largely reduced globally, because these things are often funded by our development partners. Our own nation never sees value in these things until we bring the value to their doorstep, or until sometimes the development agencies insist. So you see that quickly we'll go and pass all and ratify all these conventions and international agreements. And then when we come back to implement, there's a problem. Last year, my organization, Alliance for Women in Media, we organized a campaign to increase women's participation in local governance. Unfortunately, the numbers were very few. In the last district assembly elections, we had almost 5% elected female assembly members compared to 95. The figures are the same. In fact, they've reduced the last election, they've reduced to about 4 point something percent. So you look at it and you're like, with all this investment we make, all this noise we are making because people think it's noise, but all this advocacy, all this capacity building, and this is a time that many more women have had access to capacity building.
Yes.
Around political organizing, around fundraising, around confidence building, around public speaking, around messaging. So many interventions have happened. Abantu has been at the forefront for over 2 decades now, training women to participate in district level elections. And at the district levels is really where women operate, whether it's sanitation issues, health issues, education issues, our markets are run by women. So if anybody should have ideas of how we manage our local assemblies, and shouldn't women have some very important, suggestions to share? And yet, because of the increasing monetization, even at the local levels, which is supposed to be cheap, women are being crowded out. A country cannot progress because the science that backs inclusion of women in societies cannot be contested. When more women are empowered education-wise, financial-wise, confidence-wise, competency-wise, in all the various literacy forms, numeracy, even media literacy, a society stands to gain. So after those figures, in conversations on many platforms, the question continues to be, how do we increase the numbers of women in public life? Because that's the logical conclusion to advocacy, is that you have interacted with policy and you have seen policy change. What have been the pushbacks we get in our attempts to influence policy? There are always pushbacks from the system, from the people within the system. So we'll tell you stories of the challenges the Affirmative Action Bill has had to go through, winnowed down and watered down from its previous intendment. And the pushbacks don't come from only men, it comes from women as well, because a patriarchal society exists because both men and women allow it to exist. So when you go and it's the old lady that is still cutting the females, because often it's the old ladies that would, the harmful cultural practices, they will cut the females through the FGMs. It isn't because she hates, because she's also a construct of the environment. She feels she's doing it out of love to ensure that her daughter is accepted in the community or her grandchild is accepted in the community. So our patriarchal society, our cultural norms exist and perpetuates because of both of us, both men and women. So it would take intervention to ensure that at least some of the negative cultural norms and practices are broken. So the numbers can only increase if the numbers going into public service increase. The influence can only increase if the people who are around the decision-making tables are aligned to the cause. Because if today I have a hearing of a minister, it is these same issues that I will project to the minister. We must all be acting in ways that promotes the issues that we love and are passionate about. So politics, yes, because I have seen that we need to have a situation where people who are working in different spaces, whether you are even a religious a pastor, because I've heard pastors now preach at a church convention calling for Christians to go into politics. In our mosques, there have been advocacies to encourage more Muslims to go into politics. We are encouraging more women to what? Go into politics. We are encouraging the youth to go into politics. Nobody can advocate for you more than yourself because you live your experiences. And if we want to make our politics inclusive and of a greater value than we currently have, we must have necessarily an infusion of different voices and different realities. Okay. Because where we are today with our politics can be better. I don't like framing and saying that, talking as if politicians are a bunch of criminals, because a people will always get the leaders that they deserve. Our politicians are not from mass. They are our parents, they are our fathers, our husbands, our boyfriends. They are members of our community. The expectations we have of them, the demands we make of them is what has given politics the name that it has. And we have engineered it this way. Nobody can come and re-engineer it, because politics is supposed to be a tool for social good, a tool for the redistribution of our collective resources. And that's why the ideal and ideology of social democracy sits well with my own personal experience, where I come from. But for these interventions, we would be so far behind. And I tell people that had I not gotten an education and opportunities, I wouldn't be here. So I should know that so many stories similar to mine could have become realistic had those communities had the same opportunities that I had by my parents coming down to the south to seek a better life for all of us. We cannot build a country on the back of disenfranchising whole communities, where the gains and progress of development are not reaching all the corners of our society equally and equitably. It is unjust and it is unfair. And that is one of the reasons why some of us are motivated to come into the arena where the decisions are made, where at least we can try to influence, outcomes in a more progressive and positive manner, given the experiences we have built over the years. And that's a very long answer to a simple question.
I get it. Somehow you even sort of anticipated the next question, the natural question.
Yes.
Because you're saying this
Why
is
NDC?
Yes. Because you sort of answered it in a way. You talked about social democracy. Yes. But still, the question still exists. You still can't do the New Patriotic Party or any other political party and still push for the things that you are talking about. Why is the NDC the better vehicle for you?
So, like you're saying, there are vehicles. We practice a democracy. Unfortunately, it's become a duopoly, right? But that's what we have to work with. And so, I was at a 10 program couple of weeks ago, and I asked people, why do they join political parties? Because I was curious to know what are the motivations, for people joining political parties. I got some interesting answers. One, some were born in it, so they grew up knowing that their father, their mother, or their uncles were members of the NDC. Some had some historical issues with the party, and so they felt obliged to belong to the NDC. So these were NDC people, right? So some historical challenges or some pain occasioned by the other side, which made it easy for them to stay with the NDC. Some through the admiration of individuals in the party. So some mentioned key individuals who they grew up watching, who are the reasons why they joined the NDC. Right. So there's a filial, pathway. There's an associative pathway. There's a historical or experienced, pathway into politics. And it can be all of the above, really. So for me, I was born in a family of NDC. My father is a founding member of the NDC.
Okay.
People don't know, in the Ayawaso East constituency at the time. He's one of the founding, and he was the deputy constituency chair.
Okay.
Right. So I was born in such a family. I have uncles who are members. Alhaji Mahama Idrisu, there's an uncle and also an in-law. My sister is married to his son. So there's that history. But I tell people that if you look alternatively, my maternal uncle was Mr. Al-Hassan, the late Al-Hassan bin Sali, who was also a founding father of the New Patriotic Party, became a member of its Council of State. And his son is the current Upper East Regional Minister, who is a maternal cousin. So there was a program I did with someone who was who attempted to misbehave. And when we went off air, she was like, some of them have to come and justify their inclusion. I said, well, fortunately or unfortunate for you, some of us have seats in either parties if we so decide to belong to. So at the end of the day, it is what is your own personal values and where does your spirit feel most attuned to. I think that the NDC has a more nationalistic outlook than the New Patriotic Party. And I also think that the history of the NDC, even if we went back to the PNDC era under the late Jerry John Rawlings, despite the excesses of the military regime, and I'll come back to that, has been the most stabilizing force for our country beyond the PNDC, and transitioning us into a democracy since 1992, and we are 32 years in to this fourth republic. Hopefully, we would continue on this path for the longest time if our leaders ensure that they uphold the social contract with the people and deliver, the gains of democracy. So the NDC is a more nationalistic party for me in my approach. The philosophy of a Congress where all people matter, no matter where you come from, is very critical in building a society, not a party that seems to project a certain classism, so when people criticize the NPP as an Akan party, there must be a basis for that. Is there not? And their behaviors over the years reinforce these notions. Even though they now attempt to open up a bit, some see it as more tokenistic in trying to break a stereotype that they themselves have perpetuated. Because when a flag bearer or a running mate stands in Ashanti region on the day of his outdooring and tells his people that I am your child and I want at least 85% of the votes from you. And we hear the NPP speak about the fact that they can win a national election by focusing solely on Ashanti region, on one region, which is their stronghold. It tells you the mentality of the of the party. It means that all of you other regions, you are just little icings on you are just there to help us achieve, but our real focus is here. That kind of mentality doesn't sit right with me, and this is not to say that political parties or NDC is without challenges. Every human institution comes with its own challenges. Political institutions and political parties have their own inherent weaknesses across board, as the good governance and political scientists would tell you. So it is up to us to always connect to our foundational values, because it is a very beautiful value. it is a very, very beautiful value for the NDC to have a congress of different people from different places, all very important, all equal before the party, all can have aspirations and pursue within the party. Once you are a member and you're contributing to value to the party, you will be recognized and you will be rewarded. Those are some of the reasons why I align strongly with the NDC as opposed to the New Patriotic Party.
In fact, I think it was this week, last weekend, Saturday, hosting Alaji and Alaji, one of the panelists was Alassane Suhini, who ironically was also a host of this show.
Yes,
and also
indeed.
a host of Alaji and Alaji. So moving from journalism into politics. And then he talks about the fact that this is perhaps not the best time to be a politician. Because when you introduce yourself as a politician, people start to look at you. You are the people who are chopping the money.
The money.
Why enter politics? Did you consider the timing at all?
I think that when it's time, it's time. So who should enter politics at a time that is tough? You see, we defer responsibility a lot. And that's why I'm saying that we create the leaders we have. Because even this past weeks that I have stuck my head out, the kinds of labelings and narratives emerging from the camp of the New Patriotic Party has surprised me. But I'm not surprised, because this is the politics we want to engineer, right? If you don't belong to us, then damn you, and all kinds of machinations. And people will say something like, now that you are a politician, we will deal with you like a politician. How are we supposed to deal with politicians? You get the mindset. Then now it's as if to come into politics, then all of a sudden, all the values, all the principles, all the impact you've made in your life in a different arena no longer mean anything. And it's as if once you come into politics, you no longer have a working mind to decipher right from wrong. And nothing you say would be viewed as an objective assessment of a situation. If there's hardship, there's hardship. Hardship does not have political coloration. If the statistics are not in your favor, they are not in your favor. So if I speak it outside of politics, and I speak it in politics, and it's the same facts, how do you now come to say that you are blind or you are biased, and so I will not hear you, but I may hear a neutral or civil society actor saying the same thing? This is how we have reduced our politics too, and it affects all of us equally. And so to re-engineer it, whether you're NDC, MPP, CPP, whoever you are, because it's not sustainable. This threat is an existential threat that politicians face because they are viewed in such negative light. Do you see it? So why have I come in? And there's no time as now. Now is what is convenient for me. Now is when I'm ready. Now is when I think I am able to also support with my skills and my time, because we must all support the causes we stand for. And it was an easier decision because I find that the NDC candidate, John Dramani Mahama, is centering for this election the issues that I am passionate about. Okay. So everybody must have interest. I have interest. I want to see a fairer society. I want my sisters in Wa to have greater opportunities like me and be able to do better than me. That is my interest in politics. It is an interest. Everybody has interest and motivations why we do what we do. The only thing is that those motivations must be based on the right values. Not greed, not selfishness, not, self-aggrandizement, not corruption, not to, come into come into politics just to lord it over people or to take up our collective resources. We must restore a certain level of principles and value, into politics. And I deeply in my heart believe that all cannot be lost because we can't close shop as a nation. We are still a country of growing concern. So we must necessarily talk about the challenges within the politics and then encourage all of us, even the because a leader too, even though people get the leaders they deserve, leadership is also cause, and everything is effect. What are the actions and inactions of we in the political fray that continue to create such distrust? Look at what the Kenyans did when they went to the parliament. MPs had to run out. It is not so far from us. It will get to a time if we politicians do not sit up and clean up our act and recenter the things that are important to the sustenance and security of this nation, the nation will blow up in our faces. So the centering of youth issues was very meaningful to me, because if you follow me for the past 20 years, I've been on this youth development agenda, because it is an essential demographic. 38% of our population as young people. We can't play politics, if I may use the word. We can't play politics with youth issues. We cannot. It will threaten our security and it will threaten our society. The centering of women issues. I am a woman. I have 2 daughters, 2 sons. I want a country and a Ghana that will be equitable to my sons and my daughters. That will grant my sons and daughters equal opportunities to participate to the level that their talents and ambitions will allow for them. So to the extent that JM chose a woman as running mate, never before in the history done, on the ticket of a major political party, that shoots the possibility of Ghana having a first vice president by 50%. He did it 4 years ago, and he did it today, which means there's a level of consistency, even against internal discomfort. He went with the decision. It is not the same as Nana Akufo-Addo, who goes to Canada, and when he was asked about low representation of women in his government, he says Ghanaian women had not shown enough dynamism. The women who are the backbone of your economy, who run your informal economy, the women who contribute to the sustenance of your party, you had to go and tell them that they haven't shown enough dynamism when you are aware of the barriers to participation, the financial barriers, the cultural barriers, the social barriers, the sexual harassment issues that mitigate against women's effective participation in our political landscape, the systemic barriers. So when you do that, it tells me that you probably do not understand the fight. We have a president, a presidential candidate whose spokesperson is a female, Joyce Bauer,
yes,
speaking for John Dramani Mahama. Deputy Beatrice Annan, speaking for John Dramani Mahama. Women who are Giselle, communication officer, Central Region. So many across board. It's the beginning. So those signs for me are commitment. And I will expect His Excellency John Mahama to follow through these signs when he becomes a president. So we don't say these things because we think it's all is an easy walk. We say it because we know that even after NDC wins, we must sustain the advocacy, because these are the things that will attract the NDC to new voters who are also interested in these matters. A party should track its progress, because if all we do every year is to see, or every election cycle is to stay within 4 million or so of our vote, as in the core support of the party, is the party not growing? How do we open up the party and make it attractive for new voices to come in? These are the things we must center. So centering youth, centering women, centering persons who are differently abled. For the first time, His Excellency has announced that he's going to ensure that persons with disability get free access to tertiary education. Sometimes just mere representation. You go into a place and there's no, representation from the disability group. No representation. Or we do public education and we are insensitive to the plight of people who are hard of hearing, who are hard, visually impaired, yes, who are encumbered physically. So you go do programs in spaces where there's no disability access. These things, when you are planning, you must have people around the table whose eyes are sensitive to representation issues, to draw attention that no, this is not inclusive. We must be intentional about bridging these gaps. And so I am very excited that these matters have been centered in the manifesto of the next NDC government. And I will personally hold His Excellency John Dramani Mahama to some of these commitments. Because it is only when we follow through the commitments that we can consolidate trust and then hope to now get more people to come into the NDC. If we're a social party, we must be the largest political party in Ghana by numbers. By numbers. That is my philosophy, and those are my motivations.
Well, if you just join us, we're having a conversation and interesting with Shamima Muslim, who is it's difficult for me to not say a broadcaster.
A former broadcast journalist. Once, even JM is still a member of GJ.
Yes.
So we are still in. But some of us, our principles are such that we were not going to come into politics at a time that we're still behind the mic.
Yeah.
Some people are comfortable with doing that. I personally am not comfortable with doing that. So there was a clean break for the media for the past 7-8 years. You haven't seen me in the media. So that's a clean break, long enough for me to reflect deeply on what next and what I should do with my set of skills. So some of us ethically are like that. We are not like some people who are using their mics to do very negative propaganda. It is not to say that media people and journalists cannot and should not have political preferences. We see international media. We know where they lean. We know where the CNNs lean. We know where Fox FM leans, But we should work in such a way that when a government in power is doing wrong, we should be able to call them out, and not, use the medium to propagate some negative propaganda against other people. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, and of course you exhibited that whilst you were behind the mic always. But then I'll come back to the matter of the Zongo, because you talked about the fact that you identified that there's a challenge with Dr. Bawumia on the ticket. In fact, on many occasions he has gone back, and we have many videos have been played where he's talking about the fact that I am one of you. In fact, I was chosen for you in your interests. How do you prosecute your agenda in the face of someone on the ticket who can claim to be representing the group that you are seeking to get out their votes for another candidate?
The values of Islam, and that's what actually excites me. And then politics is politics, religion is religion. And our Zongo communities are very, very, they are nuanced. They are not easily swayed with superficial considerations. If you observe the Muslim vote over the period of time, when they're doing politics, they're doing politics. And they look at which political party responds more effectively and efficiently to their needs and are sensitive to them than how or who the leader looks like.
Okay.
If you look at the history of our Muslim and northern communities, they are very, very sophisticated in that way. And also the values of Islam.
Okay.
Many of our Zongo communities and our leaders, our imam, are very deep rooted in the teachings of the faith.
Okay.
And what they will be attracted to. Unfortunately for Dr. Bawumia, when he went to the north, he made a claim to the chief that if they vote for him as a son, because whatever it is, the presidency is coming to the north. It's the sons of, Savannah that are going to be on the ticket. It's either Bawumia or it's JM. That if they vote for him, he can go 8 years. But if they vote for John, he can only do 4 years. And it was a very unfortunate comment. Because if he does 8 years, And John has already done 4 years. How many years do we have, Sena? That's 12 years. That's 12. Just going by his logic. If JM had done 8 years, and you two come and do 8 years, how many do we have? 16. Yes. So if your argument is that they should give it to you because then the presidency will come to the north and it will be longer, you deprived your elder brother per your campaign of vitriol and propaganda. You deprived him of his constitutionally mandated possibly 8 years. On the back of your contrived propaganda, you painted him so black, and you were the number 2 beneficiary of that campaign you executed as a vice president. So imagine if John had also done 8 years. You say you can do 8 years. If you also come and do 8 years, would the North collectively not have 16 years? Is 16 years not better than 12 years? So here you are arguing that they should give you 8 years. Do you hold your future in your hands? You don't hold your future in your hands. So if it's a matter of principle, you should have been interested more in another brother of yours who had climbed up to the level of presidency, done a 4-year mandate. You should have been interested in ensuring that he completes his 4-year, his second mandate, because he had won the primaries of his political ticket. But you were not interested in that. Had he done that, and you also have your presidential ambitions, and you are very sure that the MPP will give you 2 terms as their presidential candidate, then we would have been happy. We would have had 16 years of our sons collectively being in positions of power. But you go and tell them that if the presidency leaves, it will not, by the time it comes again, it will be too long. That is not politics of conviction. And our people observe that. And in the North, hierarchy is important. You go on platforms every day, you are taking, shots at your elder brother. He's your elder brother. John will not proactively ever mount a platform and try to disrespect you, other than disagreeing on issues. But every day you are forcing him to respond to your comments. That is also not the character of, our upbringing in the North and as Muslims. So the same Islamic values that he's calling on to for them to see him as a Muslim are the same values that will let them tell him that wait your turn. Wait your turn. And it is good that Bawumia waits his turn and Bawumia tests his influence and tests the commitment of the New Patriotic Party. Because I have said that the fact that he won the MPP primaries the first time, Nana Addo won it how many times? 3 or so times before he became a president.
It was the third time.
The third time. So the presidency is something, as you can see with the history, that you have to be groomed into. You have to fight for it. You cannot just get it easily like that, especially when you have done 8 years and you've been the second beneficiary materially in the position that you have done. If you had performed, sterlingly different, if all you indicated, you cannot get 100% pass mark. It's not realistic for any government to come and fulfill 100%. But a pass mark, when you go to an exam, there's a pass mark and there's a fail mark. Of all your indicators, that's where the basis of your campaign, inflation, debts, borrowing, corruption, of all these indicators, if the facts speak today that you have performed worse than the previous administration, on what basis do you say that you should be rewarded with breaking the 8?
He says he's passed the test of being vice president.
How has he passed it?
That he has been focused more on digitalization.
Is that what he told us he was coming to do? You are the chair of the economic management team. Dr. Bawumia cannot flip-flop. He cannot pick and choose which aspects of his administration that he appropriates and claims credit for, and which he dissociates with. That is also not a sign of a good team player. A good team player, when the team wins, it wins for all of us. When the team loses, it loses for all of us. So for him to even come and tell his people that I am not to blame for the state of affairs because I was a driver's mate. When your singular task was as head of economic management team to fix the engine. Because you told us so many things. When the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rates would expose you. At the time that the exchange rate was $1 to 4 cedis. Today we are talking $1 to 16 cedis. At the time that John Mahama borrowed 44 billion cedis and executed an unprecedented level of infrastructure development across the length and breadth of this country. Terminal 3, where Ekufuado's daughters currently have shops. The Atobo gas project. We were before then flaring gas, essential gas, saving us over $300 million annually. The Atobo gas. The University of Ghana Medical Hospital, with this same amount, today the public debt stands at 742 billion. The debt to GDP ratio went up 2 years ago to 104%. And now they say it's about 70.1 thereabout. Because you are not even paying your obligations. Your debt obligations, you are running a debt exchange program that has angered the international community and angered, the local community. That has pushed pensioners to their early graves. For the first time, Sena, a former Chief Justice, the fourth most important person in the land, Sophia Akufu, having to come out to picket, and not only that, to speak against what she feels was the deplorable conduct of the NPP under Nana Bawumia in government. That is significant. Kweku Kwarteng, a member of the party, talking about the fact that we are running this country like a Ponzi scheme. Referencing all these historical systemic challenges with our structure of our economy, were they not the same reasons why John invited us to sit as a nation and speak about how to manage our economy? Because these cyclical challenges will come up. You poo-pooed him, told us that you had the men, superior knowledge, superior managers of the economy, that you know how to manage the economy, but you know how to bring the economy back to life, but you don't know how to bring lives back to life. And then in the same breath, you push pensioners to their early graves. Then one person will come and say that we are sorry for the hardships. Then their communicators in the same breath will come to justify the hardships, to blame everybody. Russia, Ukraine war, COVID, blame everybody and any other thing other than to accept responsibility. On what basis is a driver's mate that has been part of the collapse of an economy saying we should give him the vehicle? How can we expect a true accountability from this government? Because NPP needs to face judgment. It needs to face the judgment of the people who are going to look at their own state of their money, their investments, their savings, their employment, their incomes. They are going to look at the state of their health with regards to access and affordability and drugs. People have to break, they are supposed to take one drug a day, expensive drug, hypertension drugs. Some people break it into two because they can't afford the drugs. Kolebu Renal Unit. At the time that 2 billion cedis was allocated to the office of the presidency, we could not deal with the government indebtedness, and 19 people, Ghanaians, died. Today, Kolebu is crying that their MRI scan is what? Out of service. They are renting MRI from private people. Ablakwa tells us today about the state capture. Yesterday, Sami Jemfi was on air, telling us about a government that was so critical, that told us that they're going to move away from sole sourcing, which was not excessive under the period of John Mahama. Through sole sourcing, you gave such colossal contracts to the blood brother of the vice president. When Ibrahim Mahama had a legal contract, today I was with one of the MPP people who was saying that, oh, but that contract was it legal? That's the question he was asking. Was it legal? Because he started off by saying that state capture is when John Mahama attempted to give his brother the nation's bauxite. Today, the president's own daughters have been given an ambulance contract. The vice president's own brothers. We have a list of government appointees in very vital leadership spaces across the country. Institutions. One member has all the entire nuclear family of his in government. Unprecedented. The levels of corruption, nepotism, state capture, family and friends that the Nana Bawumia government has run. On what basis, therefore, do you say that Ghanaians should give you a 12-year mandate? For what? So that you will come and tell us what? So no, Ghanaians will not do that, because we haven't even seen the best, we haven't even seen the extent of the rot. And we cannot trust that Bawumia will come and all of a sudden expose the rot of the administration to Ghanaians. It cannot happen, because you cannot sit in judgment over yourself. You can't. And we are saying that things have gone wrong. So you need to step away so that somebody else comes in, so we understand truly what has happened. And if you have been found not to have done any wrong, aren't you young? Come again 4 years, go and contest your party primaries again. If they believe in you, they will vote for you. You are young. You have justified your inclusion. You must have no fears. So you still have the potential to do your 8 years. Just as the God of JM allowed for the NDC through the whatever machinations of the MPP to lose the 2016 election. It was God's divine grace. And today we have tasted salt. We have tasted sugar. We certainly know the difference. We know that the human being JM is, the character of him is at variance with what we see today. The arrogance of power, the insult, the plain insult. When we are suffering and we go to the market and we can't buy products, a minister will come and tell us that they have seen a glut of food in the villages. So when we want to buy food, we should go to those villages to go and buy plantains. Because why are the roads not? What happened to the cocoa roads? The cocoa roads, CPC, has recorded colossal losses. And when you point them out, they will never address it. Yesterday, they've been displaying on my social media pages because I made the singular comment that losses and collapses of businesses and institutions everywhere. They come on your post. They never addressed the issue through a City FM report. Then they go onto their pages and they start their contrived propaganda. Then they will go and ask you, but what was the situation in the time of John Dramani Mahama? You are in government. Tell us the situation of the company. Is that what you promised when you told us that you had the superior men? Did you promise us that you are going to come and lead a country where institutions will be bleeding? Cocoa processing company, they are all suffering. Workers are on strike. I mean, the dissonance levels in the Nana Bawumia government is unparalleled, completely unparalleled. So, yebeshe ya sitinamu na ya to aba. Yebeshe ye state of health, ye state of our money, yebeshe the state of our access to education, primary, secondary, tertiary. Yebeshe the state of young graduates who receive 700 Ghana cedis as their national service and have to take transport, food, rent from that. We will truly look at it. Yebeshe the state of unemployment. Yebeshe the state of the NABCO beneficiaries who are continuing to cry for their allowances to be paid. People will look at that, and we would see you in your attempts through this new project called DRIP to buy the votes of citizens. by deploying. So you had all these resources, and yet we have suffered this way, and yet goods cannot come from the market centers, and yet tomatoes, onions, everything had gone so high, and people cannot bring goods because of the deplorable roads that we have. In the dying embers of your administration, you've gone to procure another procurement, called Minini. Yes. So when they come to your area, please insist they do the road properly, because they will do it in such a way that within 4 months after election, the road will go back. It is your taxpayers' money. And we must all rise and demand accountability. Everything that Baumia says he will do, he can still do it. He's a vice president. He says he has influence. Leadership isn't it about influence? If you are a leader, you cannot influence your president to do the right thing. It means you don't have power.
Opinion Kofi from Nsawan Jankromu says, this analogy of two nodness for a longer presidency by Shamima is the most sensible mathematical equation, which Archimedes himself will be jealous about. Please bring her back to studio again before the election. Very interesting. In fact, I've spoken to many people on that particular analogy of the vice president. It's his main message in the North.
Yes.
Whenever he goes there in the North, looks like is how he attempts to convince people that of the two nodness, I'm the best, your best bet.
Because I can go 8.
Yes. But I've never heard the response you've given before. But interestingly, if you go to the northern region, and I was speaking to Alaji Yunus Afuseni recently, who admits that even within the bigger northern region, the NDC has lost. In fact, has lost the bigger northern region. Because now they have more seats in the bigger northern, when you include the northeast, Savannah, and then the northern region itself. In many parts of the north, there are suggestions that they are making intrusions into the north. They are hoping to do better in the upper east and upper west. This time around. It won't happen
in upper east. It won't happen in upper west. Upper west, where they have only one seat, we are taking it back. It's 11/11. Upper east, from everything, all signs, they are not going to get a seat, inshallah. So even the northern region, it was 9-9. 9-9, occasioned by some internal squabbles. Okay. They are being resolved. So we are expecting increasing the vote turnout for the presidential and then reclaiming some of those lost seats as well. So the north is very bright. The north is going green because, like I'm saying, they've tasted salt, they've tasted sugar, and they know that home sweet home. Home, sweet home. It's better to be in your own home and assert yourself than to go and join a family that tells you, be in the queue, be in the queue. How long did it take for NPP to ever recognize Dombo? No, you think about it historically. Dombo, who bequeathed your name, Northern People's Party, to NPP, how long did it take them before they were able to add Dombo to their Dankwa Buzia tradition? So your home is always your home, and come back home. To all those who have felt disgruntled, about one or two things, this is a time for us to come back home, close our ranks, and ensure that we push and drive the elephant into the bush, because the elephant has really shown that it can be very destructive. They've distracted a lot of us, 87%. When I was talking about why how we're all going to look at our realities and make a vote. Of course, it is not those who are the beneficiaries of, the largesse of this government. Even they, amongst them, some of them with conscience, when you speak to them, tell you that no, things have become too excessive, that they've gone too much, overboard. To the extent that 87%, I'm sure you did the Afrobarometer reports, which focused on Ghana in terms of when they asked the question, is the country going in the right direction? 87% said no under His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo's administration. Then they asked the question, what is your current satisfaction with democracy? In 2011-2013 period, 74% of Ghanaians said they were satisfied with democracy. Sena, today, 2021-23 period, 51%, a drop of 23%. Under Akufo-Addo, who we're told was the vanguard of democracy under his watch. See what? So when they tell you, when the same report tells you that His Excellency His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo has shown increasing high-handedness, stifling media, and eroding public institutions. This is what they mean. And you know the evidence of it. Media Foundation for West Africa has been tracking reports since 2019 to 2023. There have been 79 reported cases of violations against journalists. You see, the MPP will quickly go and enact a law and say that, yes, under their watch, they passed the Right to Information Act, and that press freedom is guaranteed. It's like this old saying, yes, freedom of speech is guaranteed, but freedom after speech, that one day we can't guarantee you. 79 violations against journalists.
So the problem for you has been the freedom after the speech.
Freedom after the speech. I'm saying, and the evidence is the media foundations, they've recorded 79 violations. More ever. And there were a few violations under the former, under the NDC administration. I won't sit here and lie about that. And some of us as journalists, anytime we have an opportunity to raise those things, we raise them forcibly, that we must always, in all times, try to protect the rights of journalists. That is not to say that journalists should also have a hall pass. There are ways of seeking redress. Is the criminalization and the attempted criminalization, bringing back door after you say you repealed the criminal libel law, bringing back door this law of causing fear and panic to catch,
and also publishing fake news.
Fake news to when we know that you are guilty of some of these transgressions. So, well, this is not me saying it. This is Afrobarometer telling us that 51% of Ghanaians, only 51% of Ghanaians are confident with democracy. Then they asked, rejection of military rule. 2011-2023, 86%. Just listen to the nuance. 86% of Ghanaians say that they reject military rule as an option to our dissatisfaction with democracy. 86%. Under Nana Bawumia government, 68. 18%, 68. Which means there seems to be a growing number of people who are even harboring, notions of perhaps a military regime would be better under the current guise. This is where we are now.
People actually say it.
Yes. And publicly. Then I say also, so in linked to that is also the general civic participation. Linked to the media freedoms. It's also citizens' freedom to participate in the civic discourse, in the public discourse, without fear, without self-censoring. I have been on air with my colleague journalists, and everybody has said that they self-censor. Manasseh Azuri, who will be launching his book today, has he not said that he prefers the media under His Excellency John Dramani Mahama than the media and freedoms of citizens under His Excellency Nana Bawumia's government? These are not contrived propaganda. These are all scientifically researched, backed proofs to show that sometimes what we say and what we do are oceans apart. What the MPP promised and the character and conduct of their administration is worlds apart. And when you speak about it, they unleash a swarm of bees to come and, engage in sexist attacks. There's this labeling they've started calling me. When you try to push back, they call the woman who tried to push back emotional. Who is more emotional in Ghana than Kennedy Japan? No, who is more emotional in his outburst than Kennedy Japan? But would they ever find themselves labeling Kennedy Japan as emotional? They won't. We live in a deeply sexist society where damn a woman who has an opinion. And when you want to draw their attention, they will quickly again contrive another narrative. Hey, this is not a gender issue. This is an issue of facts. When you are running away, your candidate is running away from speaking to the facts of the economy, and now, finding solace in promoting digitalization. Who gave him the opportunity to promote digitalization? The same president that has prevented him from pushing his economic policies and ideals. You see the double standards, the sheer double standard, the sheer insult to the intelligence of the average Ghanaian, who's had to lose his investments and savings as a result of your mismanagement of the economy. You come and you tell us all these things.
On the matter of freedoms, two things I've heard this week. The IGP says, of course, there has been many people who have been arrested on the publication of false news. Yes. He says, we've never touched anybody whose comments didn't have national security implications. Secondly, Professor Maikoku also says that if you want to credit any political party for the freedoms that Ghanaians enjoy, it is the New Patriotic Party that you should credit. Have you taken into consideration both in your analysis that perhaps it might also be the perpetrators, the persons who have found themselves at the receiving end, who should also be answering some questions?
There are laws, and the reasons why there are laws is because we don't want a society that is where life is short and brutish because there's no regulations. So laws are supposed to create sanity in our environment. I'm saying that the philosophy behind media freedoms is the decriminalization of free speech. Because at the foundation of every democracy is freedom, and must be freedom of expression. Now, is that to suggest that people who are found wanting shouldn't face the rigors? Haven't journalists been hauled before courts? Journalists on a daily basis asked to withdraw and retract? There will be those excesses. There will be those mistakes. But to give an impression of an all-powerful executive presidency and government who tries to instill fear in the hearts of journalists. I'm saying to you now that journalists themselves, including senior journalists, I was a panel on that program. Okay. Manasseh was on it, Evans was there. They said they have had to sell, and we're talking about impunity against journalists. That was the topic of discussion. And they all said they are having to self-censor themselves regarding what they say, how they say it. That is the most dangerous space to find ourselves. So it is not the act or the consequence of your action. It is actually the mindset of sitting behind the mic. And as you want to ask a question, your mind is telling you, hey, be steady, don't ask this one. That is the greatest threat to media freedoms. When journalists have to find themselves in that scope of self-censoring. All media development actors have spoken on this. And the reason why impunity persists, and again, Afrobarometer, I'm going to go back to it, because this is if we say it, they will say it's propaganda. So the independent body that has independently studied these different regimes are telling us that we are eroding public institutions. The judiciary is one. UNESCO's reports have always shown that impunity thrives when the judiciary fails to do its work. So the infractions against journalists, they come before the courts, they are not dealt with appropriately. Some cases are still there for years. When the judiciary fails to do its work, impunity thrives because people know. And again, as we have seen with the anglings and doings of this government, packing the courts from High Court to Supreme Court to Court of Appeal, packing. Why? We must ask citizens why. What is the motive behind that? So here we are being told that most public institutions are being eroded. The judiciary is one. Come from the judiciary, go to the Office of Special Prosecutor. Look at the debacles that have been happening there. From the first special prosecutor who resigned unceremoniously but left us with a letter and cautioned us and told us that this president is a mother serpent of corruption. Not my words, Martin Amidu's words. from the lamentations of the current OSP, Kisi Ajabin, who has been reduced to singing dirges. Ankwa noma medeme kura abo afare say osi obeye di obetimi aye ne breso a noko, who has bemoaned, lamented, in of the many ways in which they hold his hand back and prevent him from performing his duty. Those are accountability institutions. To date, 7 years on, the transparency organizations have been calling for a passage of a Public Conduct Act. It has not happened. How can it happen? When the whole president himself can write a letter to Cecilia Dapa, a minister of his, at the time that you were telling Ghanaians to trust our banking systems and not to rush to take dollars. Your minister hoarded over $1 million in her home, including other currencies, and you saw nothing wrong with the optics, even if you thought that she had legitimate means of having such colossal sums. So what, you preach what you don't practice? You wrote a Dear Cecilia letter assuring her that you trust that after investigations her name will be cleared. So, Mr. President, you have no issue with the fact that a minister of yours will be holding such colossal sums of money in her home at a time that the dollar was doing a dance and the city was depreciating, and you're telling your ministers and others were telling people not to rush to take dollars from the banking system. You saw nothing wrong with that. That was very telling. So why would he pass a public officers conduct bill? He himself, as president, his conduct doesn't match up to the ideals of a president committed to fighting corruption. What has he done? I was on air today with a fellow MPP person on the issue of corruption and state capture. His first example was that our former president, tried to give the bauxite mining contract to his brother, Ibrahim, who has been a lifelong business person. When I asked him whether he feels it is right for this government to give the daughter of the president's contract, the ambulance contract, whether he thinks it is right for through soul sourcing for the blood brother of the vice president to be given a contract, as we're told by Sami Jemfi with evidence yesterday. He didn't have an answer to that. And you know what he said? But if the contract was legal, there's nothing wrong with it. The double standards. So, if it's you, it's okay. If it's how many relatives of former President Mahama were in his government? Today, see the list of family and friends and associates that have been given juicy positions in this government. From finance ministry to the office of the presidency. Today, the president's secretary has also been made an ambassador. Bedio is now something, holding 2 positions, all of them.
Ambassador at large.
At large. 4 years on to the end of your administration. Ghanaians truly are peace-loving people, because everything this government has done has been so much in our faces, in your face, everything, and yet they don't want to be criticized. This is the character and the conduct of this administration. And character matters. A far departure from the man, the calm man, the very accommodative. Apparently, Manasseh granted an interview saying that he ever requested for an access to interview someone from government. I didn't finish reading, and the access was denied.
I think that was the president.
After writing on the eve of the burial of JM's mom, when Manasseh published a story about this Ford saga, and he launched a book, President Mahama went to buy the book. You see, character matters. A leader that is so accommodating, even of the most hateful things against him, is a leader we must all hail. A leader. So I told him that I would take a leader under whose watch members of his own government have had to face the rigors of law, to a leader whose favorite pastime is clearing all of his appointees of corruption even before investigations are started or completed. I'll take that leader every day.
Well, we have to conclude on this note because there are many things being promised by the NDC. Which of them excites you? I have only about 4 minutes more to go.
I'll just quickly go through them. Like I told you, the issues around youth, women, and persons differently abled. So under the women, we all know the game changer, which is the Women's Development Bank.
Okay.
It is a critical intervention. I've had friends in the banking sector who work in SMEs for women call me to tell me that if implemented well, this truly will be a game changer. Okay. You know that a lot of savings and loan companies have collapsed under this administration. And so a lot of women are having to go to these loan sharks to borrow small amounts of money, sometimes 3,000, 4,000 at very high interest rates, and they have become vulnerable. That is why we now have over 800,000 Ghanaians fall, below the poverty line, and multidimensional poverty has increased. It is these things, because when women are being disempowered from eking their economic livelihood, it affects so many other things. So the Women's Development Bank is truly a game changer that would ensure that an all-run women's bank, managed by women, beneficiaries women, targeting at least 1 million women entrepreneurs with different forms of aid and grants and loans for their businesses, will truly revamp, the economy. Add that to the 24-hour economy, which would also promote a lot of agro-processing. Everybody knows that if we had fruits, we can produce the watermelon factory that was promised while that's not there. It can run 24 hours. If we put ourselves to it. There are factories, food processing factories that can run 24 hours if we give them the right incentives. So that is very wonderful. And then the big push is also going to support some women, and especially those that are not able to access the grants and the loans from the Women's Bank. For the youth development ministry is very essential. In the past, we say youth and sports, and we don't even know where to situate the youth. A focused youth development ministry, creating a separate ministry, because the impetus of the time calls for that. We must focus fully and frontally on youth development issues. Again, here there will be women, men, persons of disability will feature in all of the issues and the problems that will be dealt with. The 1 million codes program that has been promised the young people of this country is one of the greatest interventions in this internet era, so that people would know how to code, how to use the internet, how to sell. Internet marketing has become a thing for all of us. How do you encourage all these young entrepreneurs, women doing hairdressing, selling hair pieces, sewing, creating bags, all these things? How do we let them give them the skills to be able to leverage and market their products and earn some money through the internet? All these things are then the youth enterprise tax waiver. His Excellency Jay mentioned it 4 years ago that they will give some tax breaks to youth-led startups, so they can have a bit of a breather to start their, implement their ideas and ensure that they are able to grow and scale up. Then the reintroduction of the Student Loan Trust Fund Plus. It's also very key. A lot of our students in tertiary institutions are suffering from accommodation and general hardships. We need to address that matter frontally. So the betting and e-levy tax, that one, it will be scrapped. For the disabled people, free tertiary education for persons with disability, it's there. When the manifesto is launched, you would see the comprehensive set of policies that we have for the elderly. Free universal healthcare for the elderly. It's there for people who are differently able, for children, and the protection of our children, and mental health. Because today more than ever, the young person is bombarded with so many influences that push him into taking certain decisions or adopting certain negative lifestyles. We are going to deal and ensure that there are avenues for young people to seek help when they need it, so that we can build this nation on a human resource, because human capital is the best resource any government or any country can have. And we have the numbers in our young people. We need to build them. We need to put them in employment, put them in education, put them in training, so they can help lift this country up.
Great. Before we go, there's this. Okay, this is the story we're talking about. I think this Manasseh has already been quoted. I initially wanted to speak to President Akufo-Addo when writing this book. I remember speaking to his cousin Gabi Asare-Tredako. People had told me that he, the president, wasn't happy with the work I was doing. So I asked Gabi if there was a possibility of speaking to him, and he said, I don't think he will speak to you. I asked why. He said, the president thinks you've been mean to him. And I said, but I even spoke to former President Mahama, despite criticizing him. And Gabi said, people are different, and how they process things differ. Yes. So anyway, very nice speaking to you this morning.
Same.
Yes.
So let me just end by encouraging all of our comrades that this is the time for all of us to put our hands to the wheel. Please do not leave the work to a few executives. Everybody is a change agent. We need to turn up our base, and we need to ensure that people will come out in their numbers to vote on election day. Please stand on the side of history, on the right side of history. Join our change campaign. Please campaign and share the message of James' message of hope, of rescue, of reset of this nation. You, the young person who is listening to me, you are the future today and you are the future tomorrow, and you must, stand up and be counted for. Please, comrades, let us all forget all our differences and close ranks. We have a battle to fight, the battle against the common enemy. We are not enemies. We are members of the same family. Let us leave our differences. Greater Accra is a major, focal area. So we must leave out the conflict and ensure that Greater Accra turns out and turns up in their numbers to vote massively for His Excellency John Dramani Mahama and the NDC parliamentary candidates. Please let us avoid skirt and blouse. It will not help. We need a majority in parliament to hit the ground running with the experienced pair of hand, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, a human being that he is, the accommodating leader, the trustworthy leader, the vigilant, experienced leader, and the honest leader who will be truthful to us, and he would carry us all along as we reset this nation. Thank you very much for your kind attention. See you on the next side of history and of victory 2024.
Interesting. Well, Shamima Muslim is a member of the NDC communication team, Deputy Director at NDC National Zongo Caucus, joining us this morning, taking us to 4 minutes past 10. We have to leave you on this note. Don't forget.